Am I wrong for wanting to be a part of my best friend's birth? I, 24 female, was asked by my best friend, 25 female, if I would be in the delivery room with her when she gives birth. I was surprised when she asked me, but I was excited because that's a really beautiful and personal experience that not many people besides a spouse, partner, or close family get to be a part of. But we have always been friends since elementary school, and I've always viewed her like a sister and thought it was amazing that she viewed me like family as well, and I accepted. My best friend's husband, 26 male, got really mad when he found out I was asked to be in the delivery room. He and I have never really gotten along, and he rarely says a word to me when we're all hanging out. We don't argue or openly dislike each other though, and I just figured he wasn't a very sociable person. My best friend still wanted me to be there, despite her husband not being okay with it, because it's her decision, it's not his. She's pushing out the baby, not him, so whoever gets to be in the delivery room is her choice. At first, I just thought he wanted it to be a private moment for him and his wife, and I was prepared to tell her that I would not intrude and I would just come visit her after the baby had came and they had settled in a bit. However, it was revealed to me that her husband actually didn't want me to watch her give birth because I am attracted to and have dated women. I was a little confused because I didn't see how that had anything to do with the situation. The story comes out that the reason he never speaks to me or acknowledges my presence is because he doesn't want his wife to be friends with the woman who likes women. He doesn't want me watching her give birth because that means I'll be looking at her naked and it might make me attracted to her or want to hook up with her. Gosh. He said that I had probably had a crush on his wife for years and I was just waiting for the right opportunity to get with her, and he forbid me from being in the room with them. I informed him that unless my best friend personally told me that she no longer wanted me in the delivery room, I was going to be there. Some friends have told me I am just being petty and could cause unnecessary problems in the relationship. I think that it is my best friend's decision who gets to be in there for her. So am I the asshole? No, you're right, it is her decision who gets to be in the room. This dude sounds like a piece of shit.
Pooped on my boyfriend's bed after I found out he was cheating on me, and I lit his car on fire. Disclaimers in my story time is sending me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I met in high school. He chased me for about 3 years. This man would tell me every single day that he was in love with me. This was before Instagram, so he would contact me every single day through Facebook. He would send me his favorite songs. He would write me poems. I mean, you can tell this guy was totally obsessed, right? After 4 years of this, I finally said yes to a date. And the only reason I kept saying no was because I knew somebody that had dated him, and they told me that he was crazy. I just didn't want to believe it because he seemed so perfect over Facebook. At the time, I was living in Manhattan, so I told him that I wanted the date to be in the city. So he took me to watch a show on Broadway. First off, I was really impressed that he could even afford the tickets because they were to a very expensive show. And before the show, he took me to a really nice dinner. And he proceeded to order everything on the menu. 5 appetizers, 4 main entrees, and a bunch of drinks. The bill came out to about $600. I offered to help him pay, but he said no, as he should. The entire date was really amazing. The only thing that I know now was a red flag is that he was kind of rude to the waiter. Of course, I didn't mention it. Fast forward a few months and he asked me to be his girlfriend. Now, to be honest, I was dating a few other guys at the time, and they were all really great, but none of them wanted a serious relationship, and that's what I was looking for. So I finally said yes to my ex. Around that time, I started competing in pageants, and I got very far. I went to Miss USA. Can you guess who I am? He loved this. Part 2 is up. I pooped on my boyfriend's bed after I found out he was cheating on me and lit his car on fire. Disclaimers in my story time was sent on my Instagram. After he asked me to be his girlfriend, I decided to start competing in pageants, and I got pretty far. I won my state and went on to Miss USA. At that point, my ex and I had been together for about a year. To my face, he always told me that he was so proud of me. He loved that I was so dedicated and disciplined. To get ready to compete, I would work out twice a day. I also had a bunch of classes and held down a full-time job. Here's when things start getting complicated. One night, our friends had a get-together at their house. Our entire friend group were there, and I invited my best friend. Now, my best friend has always had my back. He is my ride or die. Her and I went to the kitchen to get some drinks, and when she went back to where my boyfriend was standing, she overheard the conversation he was having with another friend. Apparently, my boyfriend was telling the other friend that I was crazy, that he thought I had eating disorders because I would work out so much, that I thought I was better than everybody else because I was competing for Miss USA. My best friend ran over to the kitchen to tell me everything she heard. At first, I thought, are you sure he wasn't joking? She said no, he was completely serious. I was really hurt. Instead of waiting for the party to be over, I confronted him right then and there. Asked him if he was talking bad about me, and then he said no, of course not. And I told him the whole conversation that my best friend overheard. But I told him that I was the one that overheard the conversation. That's when he started gaslighting me. He said that I was overreacting, that I had completely twisted his words. I asked him exactly what he said, and he told me he couldn't remember. I asked him point blank, or else he had to do it in front of all of our friends. Multiple people watched this all happen, and most of them knew that we had gotten into a fight before. One of the girls that was at the party actually messaged me and told me that my boyfriend was in the bedroom with another girl. So I ran back to the party. He was already downstairs at that point, but I asked him if it was true. At this point, he had a lot to drink. That's when he starts word vomiting, telling me that he had hooked up with girls that were way better than I was, and that I was so consumed with my pageant competition and that I was too skinny. Then he just started listing all of the girls that he had slept with, and 2 of them were my friends who were at the party. What I did next is probably not the best idea, but I did it. I grabbed a bottle of alcohol and went outside with the lighter. I poured it all over his car and set it on fire. Then I got back into my car with my best friend and went to his apartment. And it just so happens that I needed to poop at the time, so I thought just to do it in his bed. So I squatted over his bed and did my business. Then he messaged me telling me that he was going to press charges charges on me for his car. Luckily, nobody told on me, so he had zero proof. And luckily, his car was fine. A few months later, he messaged me apologizing. He said that I was the best thing that ever happened to him, but I ignored his messages. No, I didn't win Miss USA, but I'm proud of myself for what I did to him. Bye.
Storytime about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So a little background information. I was in my sophomore year of high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for about 6 months. And he had been best friends with this girl, we're gonna call her Addie, for about 3 years. Now, I had known Addie way before that, probably since we were in kindergarten. But her and I weren't like BFFs, we were more of acquaintances. But obviously, we became friends because she was always around my boyfriend. A month after him and I started dating, I decided that we had to set boundaries for their friendship. Because they had first period together, right? Well, every morning at 9:45, I would go on Snapchat and I would see a picture of them. And it would be her kissing him on the cheek. Not only would it be on her story, but it would also be on his. And I had her on Snapchat before that. She had never done that, ever. So he said that he had talked to Addie about it, right? And things were good for the next 2 months. Then they were forced to work together on a project. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So like I said, they had been forced to work together on a school project. At least that's what he told me. So I brushed it off because I was not about to seem like the jealous girlfriend. Well, the next day, him and I were supposed to go out to the movies. So I texted him right before we were about to leave, and I said, "Hey, are you on your way to get me?" He goes, "OMG, no, I'm sorry, I forgot. I have to work with Addie on this project. She's about to come over my house." So at this point, I'm like really pissed off. So I text him and I say, "I thought you guys had a whole week to work on this project. Why does it have to be tonight?" Addie knew that him and I were supposed to go to the movies that night also. He said, "We just want to get it done really quickly so that way I can spend the rest of the week with you." And she's snapping me the whole time that she's at his house, off of his phone. So at around 1:30 a.m., I get a Snapchat from her on his account, and she's laying on his chest. Like for part 3. Part 3 about why I made my boyfriend stop being friends with his girl best friend. So like I said, she snaps me at 1:30 in the morning, a picture of her laying on his chest, and it's captioned, "Hey girlie, I hope you don't mind, but I have to spend the night at his house. He lost track of time working on our project, and it's way too late for him to take me home." So at this point, I'm furious, and I don't snap her back. So the next morning, I call my boyfriend. And I asked him, "Hey, is Addie still there?" So he says yeah, and then I ask him to put me on speakerphone. So when he does, I say hi to Addie. She goes, "OMG, hey girl, how are you?" And that's when I pretty much go off on this bitch. I tell him that while he was asleep, she was sending me pictures of her laying on top of him, off of his Snapchat, and that she was sending those type of pictures to multiple people on his Snapchat. Because my best friend
their way to a school dance when they saw a girl on the side of the road looking lost. They stopped the car and asked if she needed a ride, and she asked them to take her home. They said that they were going to a school dance and asked if she wanted to come too. She agreed. But these boys wouldn't know yet that this girl was not an average hitchhiker. So they all got in the car and the girl sat in the back seat. After a while, the girl would constantly say that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. They got to the dance and things were pretty normal, but what happened after would make the boys question reality. When the night was almost over, it was finally time to take the girl home. When they almost arrived, the girl told them where she lived, but told them to drop her off close by so she can walk the rest of the way. So that's what they did. But after the girl walked away, the boy who let her borrow his jacket realized that he never asked for his jacket back. His friend said that they could just come back tomorrow for it. The next morning, they came back expecting to get the jacket and leave, but things were not so simple. They came up to the girl's house and knocked on the door, but they were shocked at what they discovered as soon as the door opened. Follow for part 2. If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. 2 boys picked up a girl on the side of the road while they were on their way to a school dance. In the car, she kept saying that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. But when the night ended and they were about to drop her off, the girl accidentally left with the jacket. So the boys said that they would just come back the next day to get it. But when they came back and knocked on her door, they discovered something that would make them question what is real and what isn't. An old woman opened the door and asked them who they were looking for. After talking to her for a while, it was revealed that the girl they found on the side of the road was her daughter. But the thing is, she had been dead for 12 years. She was killed in a car accident at the same street corner they first saw her. The old woman pointed to a cemetery down the road and said, "That's where we buried her." The boys didn't believe her at first. They'd spent the whole night with this girl, so they knew that she had to be real. But they went to the cemetery and saw the boy's jacket draped over a gravestone. And on the gravestone was the girl's name and the date of her death, exactly 12 years ago to the day.
Am I wrong for walking out of my sister's birthday party after she announced she was pregnant? Growing up, my sister, 26, and I, 23 female, were not that close. She was my parents' favorite daughter. I've always been a little overweight, I had PCOS, and my sister was slim and fit. I always held that resentment towards her, especially when she belittled me with my mom, not letting me eat more than 1 serving of dinner or more than 1 serving of dessert, telling me that sleeping in was making me gain weight. She always overshadowed my accomplishments. My sister married when she was 23 to a wealthy man 28 from our community. We're Indian. Her marriage was arranged. They have 3 beautiful kids. I love my niece and nephew more than anything. I married my husband 26 2 years ago, and we've been trying for a baby for almost 1 year. My sister always said it's because I brought shame to my parents for marrying outside our culture that I couldn't have a baby. After many negative tests, a few months ago we finally had a positive pregnancy test. Unfortunately, when I was 4 months, I had a miscarriage. I was devastated. I couldn't believe what was going on. 2 months after our tragedy, my family threw my sister a birthday party. There, she and her husband announced they were pregnant. My heart ached, but I was happy for them. As the evening went on, my sister kept making comments like, "We weren't even trying for a baby." It's so funny how we get pregnant so easily. Just as I thought things couldn't get worse, we were standing with my cousins when my sister said, "We didn't even want more kids. I was almost contemplating having an abortion." She said all of that while looking at me. I am all for women having abortions, but having my sister use it as a weapon against me, showing off how fertile she is, how she was contemplating having an abortion after they decided to keep the baby and announce it. That really hurt me. I was so upset and frustrated. My husband noticed the change in my emotions immediately. We said goodbye to my parents and left the party immediately. I got many texts from my sister and our cousins calling me jealous and an asshole for walking out on my sister's birthday party and not being part of their pregnancy celebration. What? My husband and our friends say that I had all the right to feel the way I did, but I'm not sure. So, am I the asshole? No, your sister is literally the worst person in this earth. She is so jealous of you. It's so clear and obvious for some reason that, like, she's so bitter in her own life that she just has to shove it all down your throat. People like that, when they have problems within their own life, they have satisfaction by just bullying other people. That's what bully is.
My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, "I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment." She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, and how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. When her and I went to lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, "He only deserves a really good girl." That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me, and that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad." I told her that I didn't feel bad and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing, but at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid and that she was not going to walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her, and that's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him, and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch, that I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time. And my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do?
Story time about how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So a little background information. This all happened whenever I was in 6th grade. This all happened on a Tuesday night. So I had school the next day. Well, my dad had went to work earlier in the day. Well, around 10 o'clock at night, we hadn't heard from my dad all day, which was super weird for him because he was always home around 10 o'clock. And even if he wasn't, he still would have kept in contact with us and let us know where he was at. So at this point, my family and I were really scared, and we're thinking that something happened to him. I was calling and texting him, my mom was calling and texting him. My whole family was pretty much trying to get a hold of him. Like, we had called all the hospitals to see if he was there. We called police stations to see if he might have been in jail, or if they had his last name in the system. So nobody had heard or seen from him. So we all went to sleep that night hoping that he would show up in the morning. So the next day after I got home from school, my mom came home from work and she had told me about this phone call that she got. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my mom had gotten home from work and she told me about this phone call that she got while she was at work. So apparently one of her coworkers called her and said, "Hey, I think I saw your husband on the news." So after that, she showed me the news article and I couldn't even believe what I was reading. So I guess my dad had been drinking and he went to an auto repair shop and stole a car because I guess the keys were left in the door of the car. And what makes this even worse, the car that he stole had 2 guns in the trunk. And they weren't 2 pistols, these were 2 big ass guns that were fucking loaded. Oh wait, I forgot something. So before this, he had been at the strip club and somehow he ended up in pink lingerie. Guys, I cannot make this shit up. So he was driving around and he decided to park right in the middle of an intersection and it was literally causing a whole fucking scene. There were people with their kids worried as hell. So after that, a few people called the cops, like for part 3. Part 2 about how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my dad parked in the middle of an intersection and people were calling the cops. So when the police arrived, my dad was half passed out in the car. This happened in like the middle of broad day, like there's traffic everywhere. So when they finally get up to the car, my dad is literally slumped in the driver's seat. There was a bottle of whiskey in the door and it was completely empty. When they went to arrest him, he started resisting. He was screaming a bunch of profanities at them and started kicking them, threatening them with guns, which made the situation worse because my dad had no clue that there were any guns in the back of the car. So that just made the police think that they were his. So they take my dad to jail and he has like 7 charges against him. But we were happy because we knew where he was. Well, the worst part is, so the next day when I went to school, people were coming up to me asking if that was my dad on the news. Some people were even making fun of me because of what he did. And that's really fucking embarrassing for a 12-year-old. But it's okay, Dad, I still love you. Storytime about the girl who tried to talk me into doing the nasty with her dad. Literally. So a little background information. 2 months before this whole situation, I had met her through one of my friends at a party. She was really funny, really nice. We're gonna call this girl Jessie. So when my friend and I left the party, I had asked her about Jessie, and she was like, "Oh, I wouldn't really hang around her. She's just like a really weird person." Now, I didn't really take my friend's word for it, mainly because in the past, my friend has gotten really jealous whenever I've started hanging out with other people. So I decided to find out for myself. Which now I realize that was probably not one of my best ideas. So a few weeks later, we hung out with her again, and I got her number that night. Her and I started hanging out a lot, and her and I were both seniors in high school. Well, when I would go over to her house, her dad would be super weird around me. He would just be very overly nice and touchy with me. And her mom and her dad were divorced. Well, the one night I'm sitting in Jessie's room and she comes upstairs and she's like, "OMG, I have to tell you what my dad said." Like for part.
This is why you should always lock your front doors. A kid living with both of his parents decided to watch a movie for their family weekly movie night. He then gets up to use the restroom. As he is in the restroom, he sees all of the power in the house cuts off. And then he hears 2 loud thumps. He locks the bathroom door and hears heavy objects being dragged across the hallway. The kid, freaking out, runs out of the bathroom and runs into the restroom. Once he is inside the room, he locks the door. As he locks the door, he jumps in bed and acts like he's asleep in hopes that this person who is in the house will ignore a child sleeping. He closes his eyes and hears the door creak at the same time. He squints his eyes and sees a man with no eyes dragging the bodies of both of his parents. The man dragging his parents sits his mom's dead body in a chair facing him, and then sets the dad's body on the floor facing up. It was almost like whoever was in the house who killed them wanted him to see it. He then sees the man writing something on the wall and then climbs under his bed. He laid there for hours knowing that if he moved a muscle, he would end up just like his parents. He finally built up enough courage to read the wall, and the writing on the wall said,
This man thought he got away with something terrible he did as a kid, but he was wrong. Wunzer was a rich businessman. Let's just call him Derek. Derek was walking home from work when a boy ran up to him and started pulling on his suit. He said, "Mister, give me 1 penny." Derek shouted, "Leave me alone," and walked away. The boy was left outside freezing in the cold. The next day, the same boy was standing on the street and said, "Mister, give me 1 penny." Derek was annoyed. He threw a penny at him and said, "Here, there you go, now leave me alone." But he could have never known who this boy actually was. This time, when he got home, he started feeling uneasy. Something about these interactions felt a bit weird to him. He went to bed, tried to fall asleep, but as soon as he closed his eyes, he heard a voice right up against his ear say, "Mister, give me 1 penny." Derek jumped out of bed. His wife told him to calm down, so he tried to. There was no one else in the room, but something was wrong. Derek began to remember what he did. When he was a young boy, him and his friends had done something horrible. Terrified, he went up to the attic and found his old yearbook. Then, flipping through the pages, he saw a photo. Derek thought, how was this possible? He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Follow for part 2.
Am I the asshole for making my sister-in-law feel like shit about her weight? I'm 35 and my sister-in-law is 46. I have 3 children, the oldest being 16. For my birthday last week, my son went out and bought me this swinging hammock chair that I had been wanting for 2 years, and it cost him quite a bit of his saved money, which I fully intend to put back into his bank account so he can continue saving. He was so excited to see me open this gift and couldn't wait to help me set it up. I told him he shouldn't have, that it was a lot of money, and his response was, "You never get anything nice. I wanted you to have it." And it was true. I usually don't get anything for my birthday or Christmases outside of Tupperware or soaps. So it might sound stupid, but I have cherished this swing ever since he got it for me, especially where I finally have something nice that's mine. My sister-in-law comes over once a week to see all of us, and she immediately headed straight for my swing, which my son had hooked up on our deck. I told her to please not sit on it, and she said, "Is there a weight limit?" So I told her yes, 250 pounds, and I even showed her the box to confirm. She was not upset about this. She just said, "That's a bummer. They need to make something capable of holding us big girls." I simply agreed with her and went back to my business. At this point, my husband shows up from work. When I went inside to grab us some drinks, her and my husband were talking on the porch, and not even 5 minutes later, I hear a loud crash and my husband says, "Fuck, are you alright?" I got out, and sure enough, she had sat in my swing and the crochet netting around the hook snapped on the one side, causing her to fall right on her ass. She's sitting there laughing, gets up and says, "I guess I need to learn to listen." So I lost it. As I already said, I never get anything nice. Never. This is the one thing that I had that was mine, and it didn't even take someone a freaking week before they ruined it for me. So I said, "I literally just fucking told you not even 20 minutes ago that it would not hold you and to please not fucking sit in it." She makes some comment about, "Usually the weight limit is a lie. I thought it would hold." So I said, "The weight limit would probably hold if you were only 50 pounds heavier, not 150. She's 420-ish pounds because she's one of those girls who eats food on camera for money, and she absolutely loves her weight. But regardless, instead of apologizing or offering to compensate me money for my destroyed item, she resorted to saying that I'm a shitbag for making her feel like her weight is a problem and my husband is on her side. He said, "It's just a fucking swing."
My husband refused to touch me on our wedding night and says that it's my fault. Our wedding was only 2 weeks ago, and to this day, he still has not touched me. Here's the thing, we had an arranged marriage. My family is extremely traditional, and where we come from, it's normal to have arranged marriages. When I was 12 years old, my parents told me who I was going to end up marrying. This all seemed very normal to me growing up because I saw my sisters and cousins doing it. But now that I'm in this, I realize how terrible it is. My now husband didn't actually grow up in the same country I did. In fact, we had only met a week before the actual wedding. I had a really bad feeling a month before the wedding, though. So I told my parents I did not want to marry him. That's when they told me that if I didn't go through with the marriage, they would disown me. I would have nowhere to live, no money, and no family. So, of course, I agreed to marry him. A week before the wedding, my parents hosted a dinner for his family and mine. When he came in through the door, I was happy to see that he was actually attractive, but he didn't look at me once throughout the whole night. Part 2 is up. My new husband refused to touch me on our wedding night and says it's all my fault. We finally met a week before the wedding. When he came in through the door, I was so happy to see that he was actually attractive. But this man barely looked at me the entire night. Parents presented us to each other and he glanced at me. That was it. He was extremely cold and basically didn't speak to any member of my family. The only person he did speak to was my father, of course. I spent the entire dinner trying to make eye contact with him, but not once did it happen. Thankfully, the dinner only lasted about 2 hours and his parents and him left. As soon as they did, I burst into tears. Also, I know I'm a beautiful girl. I've had many suitors come to my house and ask my parents for my hand in marriage. They had agreed to this arranged marriage so long ago that it never even gave any other guys a chance. The worst part is that one of the guys that asked to marry me a few years ago, he and I went to the same school, got along, and dare I say liked each other. At least he would look me in the face. I told my parents that he didn't even look at me once. My dad said that I was completely overreacting, but my mother agreed with me, thank God. She told my dad that my fiance's behavior was completely unacceptable, and that the least he could have done was at least said hello to me. My mom was also that he didn't even say hello to her, and that he was openly disrespecting our family. I tried to convince my dad to cancel the marriage, but he said no. Part 3 is up. My husband refused to touch me on our wedding night and blamed it all on me. He refused to look at me on our wedding day. He didn't even kiss me once. The only time he touched me that night was when the photographer asked us to hold hands for a picture. And even then, the way he grabbed my hand was so cold. When it came time for us to go to our room, I was already very upset. He could tell. We got into the room and I went straight to the shower. I took off my dress, showered, and came out. And when I did, he pretended to be asleep. That's when I grabbed him and turned him around. I asked him why he wouldn't touch me or even look at me. That if he didn't want to marry me, he shouldn't have. That's when he told me that he never really wanted
wanted to marry me because he had heard things about me. He said that we had some mutual friends, but he refuses to tell me who these friends are. He claims they told him that I had a secret boyfriend and that I had dated many men, which couldn't be further from the truth. First off, my parents are super strict. The only time I was unchaperoned was in school. And he said, "It's your fault, I will never touch you." I started to cry and I called my parents. I literally ran away from him. Told my parents what he said, and thankfully they were on my side. My father says the marriage is void if he refuses to have children with me. But guess what? I started doing some digging and I found out that he was the one seeing other women and men. What should I do?
Storytime about how I was sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart. So a little background information. This all happened last year. So originally I was working in a warehouse, but whenever COVID hit, lost my job, I had to get a new job. So I applied at Walmart in the electronics section because they paid more money, period. And on my second day, I finally went and started working in electronics. So they had asked some of the employees to show me around. So while this one employee was showing me around, he took me to the back where the photos were. Well, whenever I got back there, this employee named Terry said, "Oh, she's mine." I just laughed and brushed it off because I felt super uncomfortable and awkward. And he knew I was underage because my name tag was yellow. But even after that, he still kept coming up to me, calling me weird names, just being a total creep. Like, he would keep coming up to me and get super close to me to the point where I could literally feel him fucking breathing on my face. So of course I told my manager about it. They said he's done this before, so I was like, why the fuck is he still here? So they moved me to garden. And while I was working in the gardening section, I met this guy named Jordan. Like for a part 2. Part 2 of how I was sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart.
Something I forgot to mention in the first part, I reported Terry several times and they still did nothing about it.
So like I said, then I met this kid Jordan, him and I started getting close, and work actually started to become fun.
Well, finally, after a month, we decided that we were going to go out to lunch during work. So the day that we went out to lunch, he kept telling me that he needed to tell me something.
But he was like beating around the bush the whole time. Like for some reason, he just couldn't get out what he wanted to tell me. But then he kept trying to change the subject like he wasn't the one who brought it up in the first place. I should have took that as a red flag before we went to lunch, but I didn't. So he keeps going on about it in the car, right? And then he's like, "I'm not really 20, I'm 25 turning 26. So then for some reason after that, whenever he saw my mood change, this guy has the audacity to start touching my legs, fucking rubbing my inner thigh and shit. I kept telling him to stop. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? So then I told him I'm getting out of the car. And he says, "I'm not gonna let you," like for part 3. Part 3 of how I got sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart. So like I said, he wouldn't let me out of the car, but then we got back to work. And then he had the audacity to keep asking if I was okay when he literally just sexually harassed me in the car. So I went to the bathroom, literally had a whole fucking mental breakdown. I called my mom to come get me because I was not finna stay there. So the next time that I went back to work, I grabbed my stuff and I gave it to one of the workers to go and give to a manager and tell them that I was quitting. Well, one of the managers caught me walking out the back door and she was like, "What's wrong?" So I immediately broke down. I started telling her what was going on. And then a crowd of people came around us being nosy as fuck, listening to what I was saying. And she was like, "You're not quitting. I'm gonna take care of this." So she sent me home and she said that she would call me whenever it was taken care of. So 2 days goes past. I'm like, why the fuck hasn't she called? So then I call and I found out that she fired me. So I reported everything to Walmart ethic team and they just closed my case. They basically didn't do shit about it.
Oh, and Jordan wasn't really a manager. He was a supervisor.
Should I try to take this to court?
Imagine you and your siblings being chained up by your own parents. One January morning in 2018, a call comes in to 911 in Parrish, California. A young girl is heard on the phone stating that her and her siblings need help from their abusive parents. The dispatcher asks the girl what things they've done to her. She states that they throw them across the room, beat them, yank their hair, and 2 of her siblings are currently chained up. When asked for her address, it takes a while as she states that she's never been outside before. She knows nothing of streets or the outside world. This was also the first time she had ever talked to anyone on the phone. They track her location through the phone and police are sent out right away. When the police are on their way, she states that she's terrified and calling to help her siblings as they're chained up, but begged her to call someone for help. She also states that they live in such filth that sometimes when she wakes up, she can't breathe. No one's allowed to bathe and she hasn't had a bath in over a year. She tells the dispatcher of her 12 siblings ranging in ages from 2 to 29 years old. She states that she's 17. Her name is Jordan Turpin. When the deputy arrives, Jordan is nervous as she's never talked to a stranger before, but courageously shows him the photos on her phone of her 2 little sisters chained up and bruised. Upon seeing these pictures, the deputy calls for backup. He puts Jordan in the back of his car and questions her some more. An hour later, at 7:23 a.m., backup has arrived and they approach the house. Police knock on the door and they state that they're doing a welfare check. Since the child might be in danger, there's no need for a warrant to enter the home. When the door finally opens, Jordan's parents, David and Louise Turpin, are the ones who are seen. As police tell Jordan's mother why they're there, her heart is pounding out of her chest and her eyes are about to bulge out of her head, knowing the horror they've been hiding inside that's about to be exposed. Some people ask how it's possible that 13 children were never accounted for and why teachers and neighbors never noticed anything up until this point. That's because none of these children were enrolled in school. The oldest was only allowed until grade 3 and then taken out. They were never allowed to leave the home and they were prisoners to their parents. Their parents were extremely religious and used the Bible to justify the abuse, such as throwing the children across a room for eating candy or locking them up in dog kennels with padlocks for long periods of time. When police finally enter the home, they're faced with horrific scenes and the grisly truth. Crime Fanatic Friday Part 2, the children who were chained up by their own parents. After 17-year-old Jordan Turpin crawls out of a window from her home and calls 911 to report her abusive parents, police arrive and enter the home. Jordan stated that her siblings were malnourished, bruised, and chained up. Her mother, Louise, who has a hoarding addiction, makes them wear tattered, dirty clothing, all while having a closet full of new children's clothes with tags that have been untouched. The children reek of filth as they're not allowed to bathe. Their parents also withhold food from them, forcing them to starve. They'd resort to eating ketchup, mustard, ice cubes, grass, and leaves while their parents ate out every day. The reason Jordan made the call was because their mother told them they were moving to Oklahoma the very next day and she was going to chain all of them up. Jordan knew if that happened, her and her siblings would die. When police entered, they're left speechless. They're met with a stench of hordes of trash, molding food, and excrements. An officer questions David and Louise Turpin while the others check on the children. When they enter the children's bedroom, they find the 2 young sisters who were supposed to be chained up, but they're not anymore. They're frail, malnourished, bruised, and eerily quiet. They ask the parents to show them where their chains are and they find them in the closet. The deputy talking to the parents spots a door behind stacked up boxes. When they enter, they find more Turpin children, including who is still shackled to the bed by his wrists and ankles for weeks. The parents are immediately detained. The children are all taken to the hospital and it's found that they're dehydrated, malnourished, and even have heart defects because of how little they've been given to eat. Louise Turpin tries to plead not guilty due to diagnosis of personality disorder stemming from childhood sexual abuse trauma, but the judge throws it out, stating that she's a danger to society. The Turpins then make a plea deal for no public case and both pled guilty to the list of charges. As their children testify against them in court, both parents are seen crying and apologizing for hurting them. They were both sentenced to 25 years to life, so the children were finally free, but what happened next? Unfortunately, the system failed the Turpin children after their freedom from their abusive household. They were sent to unsafe and crime-exposed housing, and one of the Turpin children was also assaulted in a foster home. At times, they haven't had food or a place to stay. Despite more than $600,000 raised for the children, the money has been hard to access by the children and not much is known of the funds. Their court-ordered public guardian, Veronica Espinoza, responsible for their well-being, refused simple requests. When the children asked for help, she would deny the request and tell them to just Google it. No county officials would comment on any of these questions and accusations. Some of the Turpin siblings continue to face hardships while the younger 4 are safe and happy in a foster home.
Am I wrong for demanding my girlfriend to change her dress for a wedding? This happened during this weekend, me being in my early 30s and my girlfriend in her late 20s. I was invited to a wedding ceremony of a colleague and I could bring someone with me. I asked my girlfriend that I've been dating for a year if she would like to join me, and she was really happy because she apparently loves weddings. Since we don't live together, I drove to pick her up so we'd have some time to spare before the ceremony. She's also wearing an off-white dress that was rather ornate. As she comes out, she looks really beautiful and has obviously put in time to fix her hair and makeup. As she got in, I told her she looked stunning, but I asked if she could change into a different color dress for the ceremony. I'm not one for etiquette by far, but one of the few things I have heard everywhere is that you should not wear white to a wedding, unless you're the bride. She became pretty upset and wanted to know what was wrong with her dress. I said that it would be inappropriate to wear a white or off-white dress unless you're the bride, and that it's like wedding law or something, trying to be lighthearted about it. She rolled her eyes and said that it was an outdated tradition about women and virginity, and that when her friends got married, everyone wore white and that it's not a big thing anymore. I still thought she should change to another color but white or almost white because my colleague was getting married and we had no idea how she felt about it. My girlfriend became really upset and told me I was trying to control what she was wearing and that it was abusive. Which honestly made me really upset and hurt. I said something along the lines of, "Duck, well, you shouldn't go to a wedding with an abuser then." And then I told her to get the F out of my car. She began to cry and wanted to apologize and give me a hug. But I just told her to get out, which she did. To clarify, we never left the driveway by her home. I did not drop her off in the middle of nowhere or anything like that. I drove off and she called and texted me a bunch. I answered, "I don't want to talk right now," and then turned my phone off and attended the ceremony. The bride was the only one that was wearing white, so I feel as if my gut feeling was in the right. When I got home, my phone had blown up by text from her and her best friend saying that I was being inconsiderate and controlling and should apologize for my behavior. I feel as if I was in the right since it was my colleague's wedding and it was better to be safe than sorry, but I'm also not sure if I was being an asshole about the situation. I don't understand people's obsession with trying to wear white to someone else's wedding. You don't even know the person either. It's your boyfriend's colleague's wedding. Like, huh?
My boyfriend got another girl pregnant and I don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months now. I've fallen more in love with this man with every passing day. I love everything about him, but we've run into some problems recently. Big problems. One day he comes at me with the classic, "We need to talk." That's when he told me he got another girl pregnant when we went on a trip to LA a little before we became official. He explained that she's already 7 months along and she just decided that she wanted him to be there for the birth and for him to be in the baby's life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and I was silent for a few minutes. He just sat there saying how sorry he was with his hands covering his face. I love him so much and I don't want to lose him, so I told him that I understand that I would be willing to help him raise the baby. I said we could go shopping, get a crib, diapers, whatever we need to set up the room for a baby. I told him that it was okay and that we'd figure it out together. I was sure he would be relieved and thrilled, but his face said otherwise. He looked even more worried. I asked him what was wrong and what he said next really shocked me. He explained that he grew up with his parents separated and hated having to spend time separately with his mom and dad. He said his whole childhood he wished his mom and dad were still married and they could all just live together. He went on to say that he promised himself he would never make his kid feel that way, so he wants to try to make things work with a girl in LA for the baby's sake. I was gutted. I felt like everything was falling apart before my eyes. I thought this was going to be the guy that I was going to marry and be my forever. I wanted him to be. I tried to convince him that we could make it work and that this kid would have a good, happy life. I convinced him for hours and he finally said to let him think on it. That was a month ago. Since then, I've still been living at his house, sleeping with him, cooking for him and everything. But what's really bothering me is that he's been going down to LA to get things ready for the baby's arrival, or so he says, and is staying at her house for 3 nights each time. He still hasn't given me an answer if he's going to stay with me or move on and try to make it work with the other girl. I'm trying to be patient and give him time to think, but I can't shake the feeling that he's just using me until he's ready to leave and move to LA to start his real family. What should I do?